I remember this side of my face hitting the floor, and I'm laying there on the floor, and I'm thinking to myself, do you have the breath and energy to get up and climb back up on the bed? And I'm I'm playing around with the thought of you don't want to wind yourself, because if you run out of breath, these little breaths that you're getting won't sustain you. And then another thing said, because now I'm in defense mode, and it says to me, whatever knocked you on the floor, if you hit the floor again like this, you may hit your head and die. So I decided to stay there. I stayed there. This was like right before it got dark. And I stayed there, and it started to get chilly in my house. And I pulled the blankets off the bed on top of me, and I laid on the floor. I laid there, and I didn't move. I laid there, and when it got dark, I heard something say, "I will kill you." But nothing was in the house. And at this point, I'm so upset that I'm fighting this war against things that I can't touch or fight back, because I'm a fighter. But I have nothing to fight back. And all I had at that point were my words. And I'm ashamed to say it. The only words that came out of my mouth when the voice said to me, "I will kill you," I said, "Fuck you." And every time I thought about, you know, the coronavirus, I just kept saying, "Fuck you." You can't have that. You can't have that part of me. You may ravage my body, you may play with my mind, but you will not take away from me my love of God and my will to fight. That you can't have that. You can't have that. And whatever this invisible enemy was doing at this point, we just gonna have to battle it out. And that's when I felt that even with the physical pains, it almost seemed like there was a spiritual fight happening in the middle of this physical fight. It felt ungodly. It felt demonic. Um, this fight I was starting to have, and as I was laying there, and I could feel like a wrong presence when this was happening, and it just felt like I was being attacked physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually at the same time. And this is when Kirk comes back into play. I could hear Kirk when he was praying. I could hear what he was saying when he started to speak in tongue, and he yelled out, "Come on, Jesus," after that. I could hear that replaying over and over and over again. And whatever he was saying before he yelled out, "Come on, Jesus," seemed to start to ward off all that ungodly presence that seemed to have creeped in, and it seemed like it was just whatever it was. It was warding it off, and it gave me a sense of comfort. I just can't thank Kirk enough. Yeah, I can't thank him enough. Kirk, thank you, brother. If you ever see this, but whatever it was something else, and it's funny because I could actually hear what Kirk was saying before he yelled out, "Come on, Jesus!" But I can't. For some reason, I can't repeat it. Whatever those sounds, or whether it was words or it was another language, whatever it was, it won't come out of my mouth. I don't know why, and I can hear it as clear as day. And that's when I started to feel like, okay, you're not going to the bathroom anymore. You're spitting up blood. You're in excruciating pain. You're possibly hearing things. I felt like at that point I said, okay, you may be dying. And I said to myself, if you're gonna die, you're not gonna die on the floor like a dog. And that's when I got myself up and changed my clothes. I put on clean clothes, I washed my body, and I got back in the bed. And I said, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die with dignity and in my bed, clean. And that was like around going into day 8. And that's what I did. I laid there and I'm suffering through some things, through some more pain. I'm not hearing any more voices, but that's where I am, and the pain intensified after that, and I remember drifting off back into this. It was like a dark place, and it was painless. It was quiet. Um, and I remember thinking, "Oh, you're not hurting no more. You feel better." And then I remember thinking to myself, "But you're not in your bed anymore either, and you didn't get up." And I'm like, you're dying." And it terrified me to think that I was dying, at this point. There's so much more to do. So many people that need me, people that I take care of, people that I do things for, people that I try to make their lives better. And then those electric shocks that I mentioned earlier, I had it felt like one of those electric shocks, and I was back in my room. And now I'm saying to myself, you may not make it out of this. This is everything that they've been saying it was. This is that. It's killing people. It's taking people out of here. So now I'm wrestling with the thought of that. I'm wrestling with the pain. I'm wrestling with the not breathing. I'm wrestling with the thought of you know, is at this point, is my mother gonna have the police, come in my house and kick the door in to see if I'm all right? And then she comes in, and she's a senior citizen. Maybe she might catch this. This may kill her. So I'm going through this whole array of emotions, and at some point I drift. I guess I drift back off to sleep, and the next thing I know, I'm back in that dark place again. No pain. It feels comfortable. It was as comfortable as I had been in days. No pain, no noise, and and that's when um I made my peace. I made my peace with God the second time, and I just said, God, I know what this is now, and I'm not gonna fight it. I'm gonna completely submit to your will, and I ask only that you don't let my loved ones suffer like I'm suffering now, and wherever it goes from here, um, I'll deal with that. I'm cool. I'm cool with completely submitting to your will now. That electric shock hit me again. Now I'm back to the pain and suffering again. And honestly, at this point, I don't know which is worse, because this is never ending pain and suffering. Like I said, you sleep for an hour every now and then, and sometimes it's almost better to die at this point. And I'm going through the pain and suffering, pain and suffering, pain and suffering. And maybe a few hours later, um, I'm back in this dark place again. But at this point, I'm just saying, I don't know if I'm saying to God, if I'm saying to who, but in my mind, I'm saying, God, I submit to your will. I'm cool. I submit to you. Whatever it is, I'm gonna submit to your will. And that electric shock hit me again and brought me right back out. And I laid there for a few more hours, and I saw the sun coming up. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna get up at this point, and I'm going to get my street clothes on. I'm going to put my mask and the gloves and hat and everything on, and I'm going to make it to the hospital without an ambulance, because I don't want to alarm anyone to what's going on. But at this point, maybe it's something um, that the hospital could do that I'm not doing. So I went back to St. Barnabas Hospital in the Bronx. And if you go to St. Barnabas Hospital, they drop you off at the gate. Cars are not allowed to go in on the premises, so unless you're an ambulance, or at least that's what they said. So now I walk up. It's a long hill that you got to walk up and go around to the emergency room. So I walk up, I go around to the emergency room, and I they check me out and they talk to me and say, okay, the doctor will call you in soon. So when the doctor calls me to the back, we're sitting there, and he has a mask on, I have a mask on, and he takes my vitals, and I have a slight temperature. My breathing is not as labored as it was at that point. So when I look at him, I look in his eyes as he's talking to me, and this doctor he looked like he had been through hell. It looked like it looked like he looked like a man who had just got off the plane from Vietnam 1965. His eyes, he was just weary, and his eyes watered up, and it looked like he was holding back from crying, and he's telling me some things about myself in terms of my sickness. And I said, well, doc, he said, well, he asked me first, he said, what's going on? I told him that I was diagnosed with corona, and then I left and I tried to do it at home, but I just needed to come back because my breathing has been really bad since then, and the pains have intensified. I'm spitting up blood, and the first thing he said was, well, the coronavirus, spitting up blood is not part of what's happening with the coronavirus. And I said, yes, it is. And he said, well, no, we haven't had that. And I said, well, I wasn't spitting up blood before I had the coronavirus. That's how I know it's a part of it. And so we talked for a minute, and then when he was talking to me, he was actually, and I don't want to get anyone in trouble, so I don't. He actually told me, because you wouldn't know who the doctor was anyway. He actually told me that it was better, if I thought I could survive, to be home. And he told me that, he said, half of the staff members that would be caring for you are positive for COVID-19 at this point. And, you'd be laying on a gurney, on a gurney with people surrounding you, and they all have COVID-19, and they really don't have any answers. This is early on, now they have a lot more answers, and they have none still, but they have more than what they had when I went. And he just spoke about the death, and not having enough ventilators and respirators and things like that. And he was just saying, if you can make it at home, I would suggest you go home. And he stressed to me, you really don't want to be back there. And I told him, I said, well, doc, the odds of me surviving here and the odds of me going home and surviving, I like home odds better, because nobody's dying in my house. People are dying here. So I went back. I went home. They didn't give me any medication or anything like that. And he said, stay hydrated, things like that. But you could really see, you could see how beaten down this gentleman was. I left there feeling sorry for him. And then I walked back down that long hill back to the street to get to the car to go home. It's a point in me mentioning that walking in the hill. Anyone who has a respiratory problem with coronavirus, I would say, and I'm not a doctor, but I would say, drink liquid and try to move around and get as much fresh air as possible. Now, of course, you don't want to spread it, but just those walks that I took back and forth to the hospital helped with my breathing. It helped with my breathing a lot. And I realized that. I was like, when I got back home, I was like, wow, you just feel much better just going to the hospital and coming back, which is what made me try to move around my house. See, if you're sick like that and you're confined to the bed, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So now I'm moving around my house as much as I can. I'm still in a lot of pain, and sitting by the window and getting as much fresh air as I can. And then late night, like 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, when no one was out, I would sneak out my house and try to walk around the block or something like that and come back. That was a big help for me. Big help. So I would suggest that. I drank a lot of hot tea. Big help for me. Big help. So I that was day 9 when I went to the hospital, and when I got back home, I got through that day pretty good, and then things started to get better. And they started to get better. I'm moving around the house as much as I can and sneaking out at nights for my walk. And I called my doctor on the 15th day. I called my primary care doctor, and he tells me that, well, they have a New York City COVID hotline that you would call, to see. This is before they had any testing to see if you were COVID free or not. No, they had testing, but they weren't giving coronavirus tests unless you were being admitted into the hospital. So there was no way of knowing if you were COVID free, if you were you still contagious. You just didn't know anything. So I called this number thinking that they would give me a place to go to or to be tested or tell me something. They would mail me. I don't know what they were supposed to tell me, but I said, let me call and see what I can do. And I remember I called the COVID hotline, and the lady that answered knew nothing. She's like, well, if you've been quarantined for 16 days and you're feeling better, it should be over. So I asked her about maybe taking a test for antibodies. And she said, well, at this point, she's telling me, no, we're not doing nothing like that. We're not thinking about nothing like that. And so I don't know. And I mentioned to her, she was talking about my symptoms, and I told her I was spitting up blood, and she said, no, that's not a part of COVID-19. I mean, she was just so out of the loop, and she didn't seem to know anything, but it is what it is. And I had the misconception that if you have the coronavirus, it would be similar to the flu. Like when you have the flu, you get sick, and then when you feel better, you're not sick anymore. You're moving around, you're just moving, you're shaking, and your life is just back to your life. COVID-19 is nothing like that. If you get it to a certain degree where it's affecting your respiratory system really bad and or different organs really bad. And I didn't know any better. So the next few days I'm thinking I'm going to get up and maybe go for a long walk and do this. You can't. You still your respiratory system is still shot. It's been 6 weeks since I've been corona free, and some days I still labor with my breathing. And some of it's mental. You have to understand that, when you have a bad bout with this, now you're mentally scarred. Your organs are a mess. I finally had a one-on-one with my doctor, and he said, no, you were spitting up blood because your lungs were inflamed, and they were tearing, they were scarring. So, like I may have permanently scarred lungs. And what my doctor told me was, he said, we're so busy trying to get ahead of this virus that we haven't even really considered the healing process. And like I think about that doctor. How does he heal? How am I going to heal from this? Even if I don't. I mean, I've bled so much. I'm sure I have scarring on my lungs, but how do you heal? Even if you don't physically heal 100%, or if you do, how do you mentally recover from that kind of torture? How do you recover from feeling like you're drowning for 12 days? How do you, from that pain, that suffering, how do you mentally get around that? The voices that you heard that could have been spiritual, I believe, at some point it did become some kind of spiritual fight. But how do you recover from that? What do you do? It's 6 weeks since I was corona free, and like I still shake. Like my hands and things, they still shake. Sometimes I'm just sitting down, I'm just shaking like a leaf. It does so much damage to you internally that you don't know when your body is going to totally heal and get better, and mentally, if you ever recover from that. Or emotionally, I was walking to the grocery store and a car came by, and the car was it had one of those loud exhausts, and when he stepped on the gas, it just almost knocked me to my knees. So there's a long fight ahead of us. I will say this: the people who created this virus and the people who let this virus get away should be punished. They should be held accountable. They should be held accountable the same way that we are. They should be emotionally punished. They should physically be punished. They should have their freedom taken away, because they've taken our freedom away, pretty much. They should financially have to compensate everyone and everything that has been hurt because of them. I just believe that. I'm just so unhappy with the way this thing has happened, because I've always been a very confident man, a strong, confident man. And when I got better, well, not better, because I'm still not better. When I became good enough to really get up and take inventory of my life, I looked in the mirror and I saw a broken man. It had broken me. It had broken my spirit. It had physically broken me. It had emotionally broken me, and it had mentally broken me. So I never thought that I would ever say that I was broken. And I've been through a lot of things in my life. I've been through hell in my life. And COVID-19, it broke me. And I hope that no one else has to suffer the way I did. I hope that they finally release the cure. And I wish y'all well. I love you guys. My name is Nate Lucas. You could always contact me at Nathan Lucas on Facebook, and The Sounds of Harlem on Instagram. If you want to talk to me, I want to talk to you. I'm terrified about being reinfected. I know my body couldn't take that again, and mentally I couldn't take it either. So once again, I love you guys. Keep your head up. Practice social distancing, and let's come out of this thing better than we was before we went in. because the world wasn't that good to black people anyway. So let's make it a better world. Love you.